Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have a Brock Lesnar fighter showcase as requested by a subscriber called Seba on my Israel Adesanya video, in which I knocked out a Robert Whittaker with a knee. I think 2 question mark knockdowns and then a beautiful knee. So getting straight into the gameplay here. Brock Lesnar, I believe, recently became available on the PlayStation marketplace to buy. I think he was like £2, so a subscriber requested it, so ended up buying Brock, who, to be fair, I've always wanted to use, just because obviously he's Brock Lesnar. You know, he's a massive star now in WWE and was a massive star in the UFC at the time. Obviously had his losses, did win the belt, I believe. Yeah, I think he did win the belt. Obviously lost. I remember that loss to Overeem, which was brutal. But yeah, coming into it, we're coming up against Stipe Miocic, who of course is widely regarded as the greatest of all time in terms of the heavyweight division, and both in division 20. I believe this guy's beat me once, I beat him once, so this was to settle the score. And in the second gameplay clip, it will be against the John Jones. So coming up against the best of the best when it comes to heavyweights. Obviously John's a great wrestler, Stipe's a great wrestler, and they're both decent boxers. Stipe is definitely the better boxer, and it will give me some trouble because obviously using Brock Lesnar, I do have the power. Definitely have the power to knock people out. That's one thing you'll notice when using Brock. He does feel extremely stiff, and you can see just by the movement speed of how Stipe's moving compared to how Brock's moving, there's a clear speed advantage. And the one weakness, of course, is you're going to look to go to the body, even the legs, to just try and mitigate that power. So that's something I was cautious of. Obviously Stipe doesn't have the best kicks. It's not something that's as big of a threat in this matchup here than it will be against John Jones. My opponent rocks me here and he's really eager to, you know, really finish the fight. But one thing with Brock, that when he lands, you can feel there's a big power difference. So we get the takedown here with a nice little slam. I believe that Brock has the slam boost perk. So now that the fight's onto the ground, is exactly where you want to be with Brock. Obviously, you know, when he starts off the fight, he normally just sprints, and because he's so heavy, he just gets the fight opposition to the ground. It's sort of like how Curtis Blades really works his takedowns. He's just so massive that he just runs into people, drives into the fence, and you know, if he gets to the fence, he'll work them down. If he doesn't, they'll end up falling just because of the pressure. But you can see I'm posturing up here and looking for some ground and pound, which is exactly what you want to do with Brock Lesnar, just because of the power he does have. You know, he can submit people. If you're good at submissions, you can work in a submission with Brock Lesnar. But the main thing I'm going to look to do is to get a ground and pound finish, either from side control or just a position in which I can just relentlessly throw strikes. Stipe Miocic, of course, is good on the ground, so that's something I've got to be wary of. My opponent's a Division 20 fighter, so again, he knows what he's doing. And I've just got to be extremely patient here and look not to get reversed. I know Stipe has good reversals. And when it is on the feet, I've just got to look to throw small combinations. Nothing with too much volume, because that will leave me open for a counter, just because Brock doesn't necessarily have the best speed, especially against Stipe, who has got good boxing. So you've really got to limit your combinations and keep it very simple. Strike to either counter or to set up your takedowns. That's the best thing to do when using Brock Lesnar. I would not recommend standing there and just going toe-to-toe with a great boxer like Stipe Miocic. But the power was definitely there. That's one thing I noticed, is that whenever I was to land, I don't know what it was. I mean, look at the size difference here between Stipe and Brock. Brock is just an absolute monster. And another thing I noticed that you'll see in the next gameplay clip is that his leg kicks, obviously, they're not going to be the greatest, just because it's not something that Brock does. But when they land, if they land at the right time, they seem to have a lot of power on those kicks. So that's something to take note of, throwing it every now and then. Especially in the next gameplay, I'm coming up against the John Jones, and John Jones' legs aren't the greatest in terms of health stats. So yeah, it really done some damage there with the leg kicks. But as you can see, I'm standing here sort of going toe to toe. My opponent goes for the same combination that dropped me in the first, which was like the 1-2 and then the head kick, but it doesn't work. Shoot for a takedown here. And what I was actually trying to do was shoot for the takedown onto the fence, pick him up, and then slam him in the middle of the octagon. But I turned a bit too quickly, so we ended up just getting the turning takedown, which is no problem because I'm in side control. It's a position I feel comfortable. get the deny here, and once you deny these transitions once or twice, you can really start to build up momentum. So you can see denying it now. My opponent's doing a good job of, you can see he's not panicking. Yeah, that I'm denying the transitions. He's trying to pick up on patterns here, and I believe to flick me off. I'm trying not to throw in a pattern or make it predictable when I'm going to throw, but I do believe, if I'm right in saying so, that he does end up knocking me off soon. So good control time here, doing a decent bit of damage. As you can see, he's starting to get a bit excited with the elbows. And no, I was wrong. So he doesn't knock me off, he just ends up escaping. And that's just because I got over eager with the elbows. However, a lot of good work was done there. And that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to look to rough up your opponent on the ground. Little elbows there from the side control. And then posture up and really look to throw those dangerous ground and pound strikes and get your opponent out of there. But this round is going considerably better than the first. Obviously, the first we got knocked down, and towards the end of the first had some good control time on the ground, which is exactly why now I'm looking to build off of that, which is why I shot for a takedown. And I really like the takedowns against the fence with Brock, especially because he has that slam boost. Obviously, you can pick them up and then move them into the center of the octagon, throw them down, and just do that little bit extra damage. And just look at the size of him. He just looks absolutely huge, which is obviously extremely realistic. He's a massive man. And I know it wasn't too long ago, I think they were thinking about bringing him back to fight with DC, which would have been very interesting. Obviously, Daniel Cormier is the better wrestler, but you know, it's a fight, you never know what could happen. He could get hit with a punch and really hurt, although I don't see him beating DC. But yeah, as you can see, got over eager there with the ground and pound. Stipe Miocic has great reversals. My opponent ended up reversing me straight into full mount, which isn't ideal, but there wasn't a lot of time left on the clock. Therefore, it wasn't the most dangerous of positions there. So, felt fairly comfortable in that position. Wasn't obviously ideal for my opponent to end the round on top. However, like I said, didn't have much time to work with. Wouldn't do too much in the judges' eyes. That was definitely my round. The first round's definitely my opponent's round. So, you know, we're 1-on-1 going into the third round here in a 5-round fight. I've kept my stamina in a decent level, and now this is where I started to get a bit more worried, is that my opponent's doing all the right things in pressuring me here, and now my opponent's looking to work my body, which is going to be Brock's weakness. And you can see he's moving his head, going for the uppercuts to the body, really trying to catch me with a lot of these body strikes, and that's the exact game plan to go with fighting Brock Lesnar. I mean, if I was fighting him, the main thing I go for is leg kicks and roundhouses to the body, and whenever I'm in boxing range, uppercuts to the body. So my opponent's made that adjustment. You can see, kept moving his head off the center line, which is a great thing to do, of course. That's exactly what you're going to want to do. However, every time he was moving his head off the center line, he was moving it to the same side and not having his hands up. So my opponent got a bit too comfortable there, landed that check right, and it done a lot of damage. And then, as you can see, we got the big takedown there. Obviously, the slam boost is going to do a bit more damage. And now we're in the great position to finish the fight here. Because he's denying transitions. These are just small habits I've picked up on throughout these 3 rounds against my opponent. And now I'm in an excellent position to look to get a finish here. Obviously, getting a lot of deniers. My opponent has no stamina, which is crucial here. Then we go straight for the Crucifix, just because I had a lot of success in the round prior in the Crucifix until my opponent got me off. Getting these deniers here, doing a lot of damage. As you can see, my opponent's running out of stamina, running out of solutions, and then posture up here and get the ground and pound finish. So I'd say that was a fairly dominant performance, especially once it got onto the ground, and that's exactly what it needs to be with Brock. You need to, once it goes to the ground, you cannot not capitalize. You have to do your best work on the ground, because when you're doing your best work on the ground, especially when I'm going for predominantly head strikes, I'm really looking to work my opponent's head and whittle away at the head health and block health. Then when we are eventually back onto the feet, when a new round starts, or if my opponent gets up, those hooks do a lot of damage, and yeah, they'll start to break through. And then once they do, don't stray away from the game plan, just get your opponent straight back down and look to capitalize. So my favorite position when using Brock was definitely the Crucifix position. Felt extremely dominant. And in this gameplay clip here, you can see I think I was in Division 7, my opponent Division 5. This was the start of the new season, and coming up against the John Jones now. This is a very tricky matchup for several reasons. Obviously, John Jones' reach isn't great to fight against. John Jones' kicking arsenal is very good. John Jones' wrestling is also very good. So As you can see, my opponent's moving well here, switch kicks to the body, and it's the body strikes and the knees I've got to be very cautious of. If this John Jones is going to try to stand and box with me, I can welcome that, because John Jones doesn't have the best of boxing, and there's definitely a huge power advantage, so I just need to hit him with a strike when my opponent's slightly vulnerable and look to get a finish there. But obviously John Jones' health stats are very, very good, and you can see my opponent's putting me on the back foot straight away, doing the right jobs, fighting at a good range, starting to land the shots to the body, and I'm just going to be very patient and careful. As you can see, good movement there to circle away, and then my opponent copies that exact same movement to circle away also. And Brock's head movement isn't the greatest. It does feel quite stiff, and you will be prone to getting hit if you're trying to move your head. But you could see there that as I was throwing the 1-2, just because of how slow it was, my opponent landed straight to my body and done a lot of damage, which again isn't ideal. So you've got to be careful in those boxing ranges, and you know, as you're trying to come in, as you can see there, throw another 1-2, and then I get hit straight to the body again. So at the moment the round isn't going the best. You see, throw a little leg kick there, and I'm really trying to capitalize on when my opponent's going to throw a roundhouse to the body, land the leg kick. You see there, we get a little stun, my opponent sways back and then gets a good uppercut on me there. And that's exactly what I was trying to do. I'm trying to capitalize when my opponent is throwing a head kick or just a kick to the body. So he's done a good job there avoiding the tip, go for a takedown, and my opponent does a great job in denying, and then gets me in the clinch, pushes me towards the fence, which is the exact right thing to do. So it was at this point here that I knew I was coming up against an opponent that knew what he was doing, denied a turning takedown, and he's using good fight IQ really, picking shots well, trying to work the body, working the head, and overall, you know, just doing a very good job. Loves the question mark kick, which is something that I've taken note of. And yeah, this round hasn't been the best. You see, land another good leg kick there. We've got a big reaction, shoot for another takedown, he denies. And this is where it's going to start to be problematic, because the more my opponent denies these takedowns, the more stamina I'm going to waste. And it is only a 3-round fight, so I can expend a little bit more stamina. But when you're coming up against John Jones, you need your stamina to be at a great level, because John Jones, in terms of cardio, is amazing, and recovery stats is amazing. So I've got to be careful. He's catching me with that pull uppercut a lot, which is something that I need to take note of going into the second round here. So I know I need to get the fight onto the ground eventually. My opponent's obviously made that very difficult for me, denying the takedown attempts, just doing an overall good job. And I know that on the feet I'm not having much success. I wouldn't say it's not so much getting outclassed, just because I'm still landing at a good rate, still working in the body. And I wouldn't say that I'm doing a bad job in striking in terms of using Brock Lesnar. I'm very limited to the arsenals I can use. You can see another well-timed leg kick, and then my opponent dipped his head to the left and we hit him with a right. So I am having some successes, and I'm starting to land more and more on the head now. I'm being fairly aggressive when we're going into these exchanges, just because I can really feel the power difference, doing a good job of getting away from the leg kicks. So there's definitely positives when it's I'm looking at this round here, especially when using Brock Lesnar. Obviously, if I was using a fighter that was more diverse in terms of striking, it'd be a lot easier in this matchup here. However, you can only deal with what you've picked, and that's Brock Lesnar, who's going to have a lot of power in those hands, but again, not the best combinations. And the checking of the legs was detrimental to this fight here, because I'm not allowing my opponent to use one of John's best weapons, which is attacking that leg with either just normal leg kicks or oblique kicks. Something John's known for notoriously is that beautiful oblique kick that he throws. My opponent clinches here, and I'm just throwing in order just to break away from that clinch, because I can see he's trying to push me back. Goes to rip the body, and we're blocking twice. Reverse the position, put my opponent against the cage, and I'm going to look to get a takedown here, and I do get a turning takedown. And the reason I went for it against the cage, like I said beforehand, was my opponent had done a great job in defending the takedowns when I was shooting for them in the middle of the octagon. So I decided that I need to use the cage to my advantage to get my opponent down. Got a couple of deniers, went for the crucifix, in which my opponent denied. And here I'm just seeing what sort of level my opponent is at on the ground. Obviously, using John Jones, a lot of people use John specifically to strike, because obviously he's got those really how do I put it, the cheesy elbows. He's got that cheesy helicopter kick, so a lot of people like to utilize that, and pick him to anti-grapple, because you're not going to want to take John Jones down, because if you get reversed, you're going to be in a big problem. And as you see, he tries to push me against the cage here, because that transition is super quick. But I got the deny. Now we take John Jones back here, and this is a fight that could have happened at one point, and it would have been interesting to see what would have happened. If you look at my opponent's head health there, it's in a very bad spot, and I'm letting him recover because I thought he was going to deny this, and rather than going for strikes and get reversed, I opted to go straight into side control, which maybe if I'd gone for the ground and pound strikes, I could have finished the fight a lot earlier. So that's something I look back on now and, you know, potentially regret, because I could have got my opponent out of here this round. Done great work on the ground and even on the feet. This round's been overall a lot better. Even in terms of striking, we got the leg health events, I believe, and just our shot selection was really well done. We was catching my opponent a lot. As you can see, beautiful leg kick there, that was timed to perfection. And coming into the third and final round here, I know that he's potentially 1-1 on the judges' scorecards, and you can see that my opponent definitely knows this, because he came out here very aggressive, definitely looking to put a stamp on this round, opening up with the knees and the elbows. You can see doubling up on those elbows, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this fight's going now. Clinch, land a little punch there. I was going to try to drive my opponent to the fence, but again, done a good job of getting out. As you can see, I did go for the takedown off the clinch, and he's still trying to rip me with elbows, moving around. Beautiful leg kick there, knocks John Jones down, and we go for another one. Sway that front kick there, and I've done that twice this fight. As well, I get hit with it there, but I swayed it twice. The first time went to the head, it didn't do too much damage, so I opted to rip the body instead. He was going for the body shots there, land and done a considerable amount of damage just because his head health's so low. I'm ripping to the body here, go to the head off the break of the clinch, and you can see I just started throwing hooks wildly. That was for me to jump on top and look to get a finish, but unfortunately that just didn't happen. Get the takedown, get the deny, and as soon as I got to the ground, I knew that this fight was going to be over with, just because the round prior I had done such a good job of controlling the fight, getting my opponent into the crucifix here. And now it's just about trying to get those deniers, and my opponent done a good job. And here, always deny to the sprawl. You always want to deny where the least advantageous position for yourself. So if my opponent gets to the sprawl, that's not very good. If my opponent goes to side control, I'm still in a very good position. So I always pre-denied that, which is why I got that deny off. And you can see my opponent's head health just deteriorating. Get the deny, and if you look in the top left, not got much left. Land these strikes. He's literally no head health left, and somehow manages to get up. I thought that was crazy. He was literally one strike away. I think as he went to throw that knee there, I clipped him with a punch, because you can punch from that position, which knocked down my opponent. Knocked him down here again. Go to the body. I shoot a takedown, and my opponent denies it, because I really wanted to finish this fight on the ground. Get the double leg, which is, you know, like a classic Brock Lesnar thing, using all his speed and weight and momentum into forcing the opponent down. Got a little bit of time to work with on the clock. I know my opponent's head health's virtually done, and I secure the finish there. So great fights using Brock Lesnar. Obviously, the first fight against Miocic was a lot more wrestling based, and this fight here had to come through some adversity in the first. In the second, you could see how I was striking and mixing up well with the wrestling. So you got to see two sides. You got to see how good Brock Lesnar is at grappling, which is very good, elite grappler, and you know how his stand up isn't the greatest, but you can do some work. So that was the video. Any content suggestions, let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you are new, subscribe for more UFC 4 content, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.